Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, November 18th, 2019, and you have reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper, but we don't have a review for you in this particular episode. This is our freeform segment. We call it the Society Sound Off, and it's the 41st time that we did it here in episode 57.4. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here this evening, and I'm in another familiar apartment here that isn't my own. I'm playing musical apartments here. As you may, just 1 week ago tonight, I did the review of Two Lovers from Society member George's apartment in New York, and now I'm back in LA at Society member Devin's apartment. If you recognize the picture, the blown up photo behind me, so I'm like doing a tour of the various Society members' houses. There was a power outage at my own house, so I wound up here, and you know, whatever it takes to get the show done is what I like to say. Speaking of other Society members, I've got a couple co-hosts with me tonight for the Sound Off. They have two previous shows that they've done together, including a review of Creed 2 and a review of Last Temptation of Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my partners from the upcoming 1959 review, Patrick Taylor, is here.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. That's his greeting. And also George Pappas is here.
Hello, hello.
All right, guys, so here is our schedule for this, our 57th series of episodes. It started on Thursday, November 7th, with a review of the current feature Motherless Brooklyn, and continued last Monday, as I said, with a review of the indie spotlight Two Lovers. And George was with us this past Thursday on November 14th for a review of the classic film Faces, directed by John Cassavettes. And, of course, now is the Sound Off, and we've got, there you see a couple things we've got coming up, the movie game, the segment we call What's Their Bucket, and I'm supposed to count down the top 5 John Cassavettes films based on our discussion of Faces this past Thursday. All right, guys, that was the schedule. It's time for drinking. Patrick sometimes drinks with me. I've got Goose Island here. Patrick, do you have anything for tonight?
No. I just came back from vacation, and I am currently on a diet, strict diet, no alcohol, no bread, Whole30 style. So.
And it must have been a quick vacation because you were on that Two Lovers show just a week ago.
Well, it was a 5-dayer, so, in South America, it's too hot to stay very long. So I'm back.
Welcome back. And George, I suppose you're not drinking anything either.
That's right.
The first segment we always do in the Sound Off, if we can squeeze it in, it was always Davey's least favorite segment. George, do you know what it is?
I have no idea, actually.
It's called This Day in History, which only has a little bit to do with movies, but it's kind of fun to figure out what happened on this day in history. Patrick, you ready for this day in history?
Yeah, I'm ready, man. What you got for me?
All right, this day in history, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about November 18th. And on this day in 1927, the Jazz Singers released the first talkie ever, changing the film industry overnight. Also on this day in history, in 1949, Jackie Robinson wins the National League MVP in only his 3rd season. Only 2 years earlier, he would break the color line when he debuted in Major League Baseball to be the first African-American to play a professional sport. In that year, he would win the first ever Rookie of the Year award. And on this day, November 18th, in 1979, Pope John Paul is the first pope ever to visit the White House. And that happened on this day. Birthdays today, Elizabeth Perkins turns 59 today, born in 1960, perhaps best known for the film Big, which we viewed last year in our 1988 review. Most recently, she appeared in the HBO miniseries Sharp Objects. So, guys, that's this day in history for November 18th. You guys have anything on any of those little tidbits?
You would think the Pope would have visited during JFK, but maybe that's just too close to home,
I think it was
George was around during this part.
That was actually a very controversial. Kennedy's Catholicism was very controversial, and he probably wanted to keep his connection to the Pope as, didn't want to call attention to it at all.
Missed opportunity, Mr. Pope. Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, they corrected that in 1979, apparently. Okay, you guys ready to move on?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is one of the most popular segments that we have on the show, and here it is now. It's the movie game. Audiences get a kick out of it, as do the hosts, actually. Davey used to love it when it comes along, and I don't think we've done it since losing Davey. It's very easy, but let me explain the rules, especially for Patrick, just in case. The idea is one of us names a movie. And the next person, and we go around, and the next person has to name the actor or director of the movie. And then the next person has to name another movie that that person was in. And then we just go around and around, movie, person, movie, person. Now, if you name a movie or an actor, be sure you can name another movie that that actor was in or another actor in that movie, or else it won't count. If you can't answer the question, you're out, provided that someone else can answer the question. If they cannot answer their own question, they're back in. Like if I said Star Wars and none of you can name an actor in Star Wars, and then it comes back to me, I don't win unless I can also name an actor in Star Wars. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I'm going to lose this game, guys.
You are going to lose, which brings me to my disclaimers here, because I have a special Patrick disclaimer that I want to go on here. Now, George and I have never played this together. Is that when you say that's correct, George?
Yeah, that's definitely correct.
But George is the only person I know that could possibly beat me. I've never lost on the show before, but today will probably be the day. However,
You're probably gonna win.
Well, I don't know. But I would say, George, in the beginning, and for you and me, I would like to try and keep Patrick in the game as long as possible. I imagine we'll inadvertently knock him out, but and then once we do, we can start to get a little more challenging if we need to. In the beginning, I'd like to try and keep some softballs for Patrick, and then
there is no softball. I remember the characters' names. I don't remember the actors' names. I mean, if I can have a handicap.
If you can name the exact character name, then maybe we'll talk about it. We'll have to have it. George and I will have to decide if that's fair or not. You guys ready?
I think so.
Let's go.
All right. So it seems this is a good game for the 3-person shot. So I'm going to go to it. And because I'm doing a top 5 John Cassavettes situation later, I think we should start there. And I'm going to start to George because I don't think Patrick's going to know any John Cassavettes. I'm going to say George, John Cassavettes, and you just have to name a film he directed or was in. And it would go then to Patrick.
Okay. Directed or was in?
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby.
That's what I was hoping you would say, because I'm hoping there's a chance Patrick has seen Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have no idea. I've seen the movie, but I want to know about, wasn't the baby's name Damon or something?
Oh, no.
No, that's you're thinking The Omen.
Oh, I'm thinking The Omen. Okay, I'm out.
Well, you're only out if I can name another person in Rosemary's Baby or who directed Rosemary's Baby.
Which you can.
And we might do another round, Patrick. So stay strong. A couple different directions. Let's go Roman Polanski.
I have to name a movie or
movie.
Roman Polanski directed, right?
Yeah, or was in, but yeah.
Okay. Was in?
It doesn't have to be was in. I mean, okay. A couple he was in, but
I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Chinatown.
My number 2 favorite movie of all time. So I'm going to say John Huston.
And I will go with The Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon. All right. Let me go with Sidney Greenstreet.
Casablanca.
Claude Rains.
Notorious.
Ingrid Bergman.
Autumn Sonata.
Ingmar Bergman.
Ooh, I dug us into a hole with this one.
I mean, there's an obvious out here. There's an actor he works with a lot that we can keep going if you can give me a movie that actor was in early in his career.
Yeah, I can think of 2, but this movie will be Cries and Whispers.
Max von Sydow, which could get us back on track, George. You see what I'm saying?
I'm not sure he was in that, was he?
Oh, that's the actor I was hoping. All right, so I don't know that he is. I've never seen Cries and Whispers, so I don't know.
He's
all right.
Not. Yeah.
There you go. George wins. Patrick, did you learn a lot?
I learned how much I know, how little I know. So if we start talking about black films, I feel like I might have a chance, But
all right. So in the next round, Patrick, I will let you start us off.
Oh shoot! I got you guys pinned.
You're gonna try and stump us from the beginning?
No, not from the beginning. But I mean, you should have seen this film. But if you didn't, well, I feel like we can go down a rabbit hole that I might be able to compete.
Okay. All right. Good. So take it away.
New Jack City.
All right. So Mario Van Peebles, George.
I don't think I can name anything by him. Sorry, I know his name.
Yeah. All right. The George is out. I can name a couple other Mario Van Peebles movies. Ken Patrick.
Why couldn't you say Wesley Snipes? Mario Van Peebles, he was in...
George, you'll have to look it up if I don't know if Patrick just makes up a name of a movie or...
No, I can see it.
There's 2 other movies I can think of off the top of my head that he directed.
All right, you go. I mean, I feel like if you don't answer it, you should lose too.
Well, that is the rule if I can't answer it, but I can because I can't remember what year it was in, 08 maybe? Or maybe even earlier, 03. He made a great movie about his father's attempts to make a movie. The movie's called Badass, with several S's on the end, about his father, Melvin Van Peebles, who directed.
Jack's Badass song was his father's.
Correct. Mario made a movie about the making of that movie. It was outstanding. It was my number 3 movie of that year. I can't remember. 04. I want to say 04, actually. Have you heard of that movie, Badass?
No, but I stayed in one round. So,
you did. I'm proud.
I don't think I did. I don't think I stayed in a round. Actually, I don't think I stayed in a round.
We'll go in the other direction now, and I'll give one to Patrick that I know he can answer. Hopefully he remembers, because we reviewed it a week ago. Two Lovers to Patrick.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix to George.
I got this one.
Parenthood.
Old Joaquin Phoenix. Look at you. To keep Patrick in, Steve Martin.
The Three Amigos.
Three Amigos to George.
Martin Short.
Martin Short, Father of the Bride to my friend Patrick. You can't say Steve Martin again.
I can't say Steve Martin. That's the main character. I don't even know who the love interest was. Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, he's married. It's the daughter that I guess has a love interest, right? Because she's getting married.
Yeah.
All
Oh.
right, George, can you name another person in Father of the Bride?
Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton. So many different directions. I'll go with Reds.
Maureen Stapleton.
In deference to our 1959 review, Patrick will maybe get to watch this movie, and it's actually, you own this movie, The Fugitive Kind.
Okay. Sidney Lumet.
Sidney Lumet. All right. In deference to a top 5 that I've got coming up, I'm going to go with the remake that he made of a John Cassavetes film, Gloria.
Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone plays Gloria in the remake. Absolutely. And so let's go Total Recall from our 1990 in review. See how I'm constantly trying to bring it back to the show?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
See, now, Patrick, you could be back in right now. You love Arnold Schwarzenegger. Do I want to go this direction? Oh, I don't. I don't want to go that direction. There's an easy one that I'm trying to figure out. All right, True Lies.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis. I can get really obscure here. I'm going to go for it. An obscure Australian movie called Road Games.
No, I have no idea. I'm thinking of Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. So no.
Stacey Keach is her co-star in Road Games. Very weird movie. I do recommend it, though. I saw it at the New Beverly a couple years ago. And George, you've been to New Beverly, haven't you?
Yeah, I like the New Beverly Theater.
It's my favorite. Patrick, you may have even been there. It's on Beverly and Detroit. Beverly between Detroit and Formosa, I believe.
I believe.
Owned by Quentin Tarantino. Ladies and gentlemen, that is The Movie Game. All right. Great job, everybody. Was that a little fun, guys? Right? A little fun?
Yeah.
It's been a real hit on this particular show. And that brings us to our next segment, and it's called What's Their Bucket? And the title is what Society member Jim Carroll says when he can't remember someone's name. And true to form, the actors and actors that we spotlight in this segment tend to be those on-screen presences that we often see but don't know by name. The character actor. Those that have made careers out of small but important and memorable roles on film. This third time we've done this. The other two times that we've done this, I don't think either of you have been on Sound Offs when we've done the What's Their Bucket.
I don't think so.
The other two that we've done, the first one, and they're both from our 1942 in review. First was Cecil Kellaway, and then Agnes Moorehead was the second What's Their Bucket actor that we spotlighted. Both of these actors are former Oscar nominees and have passed on. But today's actor is very different. He's from our 1988 review. He has not really come close to Oscar consideration, and he is still with us and working. And ladies and gentlemen, his name is Emmet Walsh. That's the first initial M, and then the name Emmet Walsh. George, you probably know Emmet Walsh.
Yeah.
Patrick?
All actors that aren't like Arnold Schwarzenegger or What's a Bucket to me. So it doesn't really, this doesn't where I've known him from.
Well, I'm about to tell you. This segment is where we try to shine a light on these actors that don't often get the spotlight shown on them. He's had an incredibly long career. And I thought of him because he appeared in not one, not two, but 3 films that we watched from our 1988 review, including a performance in Clean and Sober that I thought was borderline Oscar-worthy. He played Michael Keaton's AA sponsor and created a full character whose history was omnipresent, but didn't weigh the new man down. He's a man who had the arc that Keaton is to have later in the movie. And although he's now enlightened, Walsh made you feel those darker days as he tries to help Keaton with his own brand of tough love. I eventually knocked it off my top 5 supporting actor performances because ultimately it's a fairly small role as compared to some of the other performances I was considering. Incidentally, the other 1988 movies that he was in include Sunset, directed by Blake Edwards, and Robert Redford's film, The Milagro Beanfield War. Those 3 films, I think, are a microcosm of a career that moves deftly between comedy and drama. Michael Emmet Walsh was born in upstate New York in 1935. He was raised in Swanton, Vermont, where he lost his hearing in his left ear when he was 3 years old. He attended Clarkson University in Nebraska, where he earned a BA in business administration in 1958. It's unclear how or why he made a transition to acting and filmmaking, but he started as a background actor, or to the layman, an extra in films. But the films he managed to get in were some pretty big ones. He did extra work in films like Arthur Penn's Alice's Restaurant as a sergeant. He was a bus passenger in John Schlesinger's Best Picture winner, Midnight Cowboy. He was a guard in the film Little Big Man, again for Arthur Penn, and an officer in Peter Bogdanovich's What's Up, Doc? Then small speaking roles started to pop up, including in films like Sidney Lumet's Serpico. George brought up Sidney Lumet already once tonight. He was in The Prisoner of Second Avenue, Bound for Glory, and as a bus driver in Mikey and Nicky, featuring the subject of the upcoming top 5, Mr. John Cassavettes. Then from those small roles, he would get some even bigger roles that cemented his status in film history. For example, the newspaper writer in the cult classic Slapshot, the parole officer Earl Frank in Straight Time with Dustin Hoffman, the crazed sniper Patrick in Steve Martin's The Jerk, the swimming coach in Ordinary People, a liberal speaker in Reds, which came up earlier tonight, and also, quite memorably, Harrison Ford's boss in Blade Runner. You remember Blade Runner, Patrick?
Yes.
Do you remember the boss?
Yeah, I do. I looked this guy up. I'm like, oh shoot, he's been in tons of movies already.
Well, right. That's what I'm getting to. After Blade Runner in 1983, 2 first-time filmmaker brothers gave him the shot of a lifetime. In the Coen brothers' debut feature, Blood Simple, Walsh played double-crossing PI Lauren Visser, and he would go on to win the Independent Spirit Award as Best Actor of 1984, back when the Spirit Awards and the Oscars had far less crossover, and he would continue to work with the Coen brothers after that in films like Raising Arizona. Emmet Walsh is still working today at the age of 84, as active as ever, appearing as a caretaker in the current release Knives Out, directed by Rian Johnson. He's also had recurring roles in not 1 but 2 TV shows this year, Sneaky Pete on Amazon and The Righteous Gemstones on HBO. To date, Walsh has 227 credits as an actor on IMDb, including over 100 films. We may not all know his name, but his impact is felt large and wide. Late Roger Ebert even coined the Stanton-Walsh rule, stating that any movie that features either Harry Dean Stanton or Emmet Walsh can't be all bad. Walsh is quoted as saying, "They pay me to do what I would happily do for nothing." And we're glad they did pay him, though, so he was able to make a career out of creating indelible characters that enrich every movie he's a part of. Guys, that's my presentation on Emmet Walsh, our spotlighted character actor of the day. What do you guys have to say?
I hadn't thought of him in a long time, but he's definitely a very reliable character actor, yeah.
And an appropriate choice to spotlight, you think?
Well, yeah, because he's had a great career. Worked for, you say he's still working now? It's 35 years of, and more, from, if you're counting the extra work, he's been working for close to 50 years.
It'll be 51 years.
It's been a pretty remarkable career for anybody who can last.
And he started late. He started in mid-30s, doing those extra roles. So without really any official theater training or anything like that. Patrick, you said even you know this guy.
Yeah, no, I actually watched the show Sneaky Pete, and he has a large and memorable role in that show. He plays a deadbeat dad, but a lovable one.
I just finished season 2, so I have to catch up.
Oh yeah, it's not a plot point. Well, it's great.
I'm the one who mentioned he was on. You're not giving anything away.
Okay, good. He's great. He is one of those actors that you like you said, you don't know his name, but you definitely know his face. Like I feel like I've seen him in a bunch of things that I can't necessarily recall because that's just my personality. But I've seen him in a lot of different stuff. Have
you seen The Jerk at least?
No, I don't think I've seen The Jerk.
Steve Martin's first real big movie.
The Jerk is very funny.
Yeah, I feel like I've probably seen, because if it was on HBO as a kid, I watched everything that was on HBO.
You've seen clips. Like, clips are played all the time. It's a classic comedy. We went to see it a couple years ago at the cemetery. All right, you guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you got more on Emmet Walsh.
What's coming now?
The top 5.
Oh, you're
Time for the top five, ladies and gentlemen. It's the top five John Cassavetes films is what I was assigned this evening.
Let me look them up. Hold on.
Based on our review of the film Faces that we reviewed in our last episode 57.3. I'm going to do my disclaimers while Patrick is looking it up. John Cassavetes has only directed 12 films, so on this list we're including his appearances in front of the camera as well. Now, George is the one who assigned this top five to me. When he selected this as an option, I realized how lacking I was in the Cassavetes oeuvre. I had seen Faces before, but that's just about it. So for a month plus now, I've been burying myself in tons of Cassavetes films that he directed, including the one that Patrick and I have to watch for our 1959 in review, his first film called Shadows. I discovered that I felt similarly about most of his films the way I do about Faces. Cassavetes' style and subject matter mostly leaves me cold. Strangely, on the surface, Cassavetes and I have a similar aesthetic, character-driven narratives, open to improvisation, with a desire to try and capture real life instead of some artificial representation of that. However, Cassavetes' attempts to recreate reality turns out as stylized as anything in Wes Anderson's world. It's a different kind of stylization, and the word I use in the Faces review is hyper-reality, a dark, borderline misanthropic peek behind the curtain of the hypocrisies of the modern world of the 60s and 70s, particularly as it relates to relationships and gender roles. And so as a result, only two of the films that John Cassavetes directed, starting with the one I just watched for the first time 2 days ago, is going to make my list tonight. So you guys ready for the list?
1 second. IMDb says that Shadows was 1958. Just going to let you know that.
It was released November something 1959 because
All right.
it was he had a private screening in 1958. They shot it in 1958, but they went back and shot more in 1959. Don't mess with me, Patrick, on 1959.
Hey, I'm just reading from the book, okay?
Premiered at one of the first indie theaters. I forgot the guy who ran it. But I forget the name of it too. But it premiered in Midtown area in 1959. And you're just kind of I'm not in my own apartment, so I don't have my books with me to prove it. But you're gonna have to trust me on this, Patrick.
I don't trust you.
But you're gonna have to watch it anyway. Okay, cool. Because regardless of what the IMDb says, it was eligible for Oscars in 1959. But Shadows does not make this list. Instead, my number five, out of all the films I watched in the true Cassavetes style, this is the one that worked best for me. His 1974 exploration of mental health, A Woman Under the Influence. A very difficult, challenging movie that I admit is quite accomplished, even though it's hard to say that I enjoyed it. The key to the film in this case is the otherworldly performance by Jenna Rollins. Not only it is the best I've ever seen her, it might be a top 10 all-time performance. It's still haunting me 2 days later. Her mental instability was frighteningly real for me, even if the film and doctors in the film don't take time to define it. They might not even have known back then, but that doesn't mean it felt random or arbitrary. I complained on the Faces review about his use of extreme close-ups, but that worked here, putting us inside her world and also inside her discomfort. The way he and his camera team play around with soft focus added to that effect as well. I thought it was particularly interesting how crazy everyone else in the film acted when it came to Mabel's issues, blurring the lines of who's actually crazy, and any one of us could have the potential to go down that same path at any given moment. I still found elements of his style off-putting and somewhat indulgent. The film was still meandering and too long with unnecessary scenes and moments. And again, all the yelling and the rage, just like Faces, felt unnatural. Characters voicing their subtext in a way that is only realistic in a Cassavetes world. The film I watched right before this one was another Oscar-nominated performance by Jenna Rollins, the film Gloria. I think I enjoyed Gloria a little more. It's a little more Hollywood, but I have to admit that A Woman Under the Influence is a more accomplished film. It sounds like Patrick has not seen A Woman Under the Influence, I presume. George.
Yeah, I saw it when it was first released. A Woman Under the Influence is amazing for her. Peter Falk is very good in it as well. It is, though, a very uncomfortable experience. It's not trying to be comfortable, so I wouldn't call that a failure. It is an unnerving experience. Certainly should be seen, though, to this day, I don't think that kind of disconnect has been as well recreated. Neither a woman's or a man's has been as well recreated on film. Definitely, it's like getting an electric shock watching her through.
I think, yeah, I think I definitely touched on how uncomfortable it was, but in that sense, it's highly impactful. And I debated, whether this was going to be Gloria or Woman Under the Influence, but for me, if I was true to my heart, I had to admit that Woman Under the Influence is a better film. Gloria is a lot of fun. I enjoy her shooting people up. It was sloppy in places, and the acting isn't as good.
It has one of my favorite exchanges of all time. Give me a beer. What kind? Cold.
Yeah, she's a tough cookie in that movie. So just so everybody knows, that Woman Under the Influence and Shadows, as it happens, are both available currently on YouTube in their entirety for free, not with ads, probably illegally there, but they are there. So if anybody is curious to watch them. All right, I'm gonna move on to number 4. You guys good? They're good. It's interesting enough that my number 4 is back-to-back appearances for this film on my top 5, both times at number 4. It appeared on the last Sound Off, which in episode 56.4, in which I did a top 5 films that feature interracial friendships, and that's this film, Edge of the City, a small intimate drama from 1957, directed by Martin Ritt, perhaps best known for the film Sounder. This film features Mr. Cassavettes and Sidney Poitier. The two men play longshoremen in New York who form an unlikely friendship, both trying to escape from the past and carve out a new future. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I remember the film making a visceral impression on me. As the title might suggest, the film is gritty and nuanced, very character-driven, and as such, right up my alley. The two actors are excellent, and along with the director, put a great deal of attention into the scene work, which feels vivid and real. The result is a film that feels a lot more naturalistic than many of its contemporaries. Patrick, I don't suppose you've seen Edge of the City?
I'm looking it up because what did they work? They didn't work in like a shipyard. Did they? Where did they work?
They were longshoremen, I believe.
Yeah, I have seen this movie.
Oh my gosh!
Because my father makes me watch Sidney Poitier movies. But I have seen this movie. And
what did you think?
From what I recall, I really enjoyed the film. Yeah, I remember it because of the dots. Yeah, I remember it. It was like a gritty kind of a New York City film.
Very gritty.
It was very real. I remember enjoying the film. That's what I remember.
Yeah, me too. And I heard George say gritty, and I think I said that as well. So I agree with you, George. Sounds like you've seen it too.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I do like that movie very much.
You don't begrudge it being on this list?
No, it's a good movie.
Yeah. Next, number 3 on the list is Cassavetes' only Oscar nomination as an actor. Came in this next film that also appeared in the top 5 I did in the films of 1967 in episode 46.4. This came in at number 4 in that top 5. And of course, George, I'm referring to
The Dirty Dozen.
The Dirty Dozen. This movie was a big hit, and as a result, perhaps dismissed too easily as a guy movie, an action movie with brawn and no brains, but that's not the case. It's extremely well directed by Robert Aldrich, detailed with a strong sense of character and humor, but despite all the macho antics, there's a story of redemption, the potential of rehabilitation and second chances, and the power of the lack of judgment, meaning when you don't judge others. Just because it's exciting doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on, and that's part of the power of The Dirty Dozen. It's fun, smart, deep, and detailed. And Cassavetes is very good and worthy of his nomination. He completes an entirely unique, passionate, believable, and thorough character. I'm not sure he should have won in this category in particular in a very big year featuring performances by George Kennedy and Cool Hand Luke and Gene Hackman and Bonnie and Clyde. To me, the winner should have been the unnominated amazing performance by Scott Wilson as Hickok and Richard Brooks' adaptation of In Cold Blood, but that's neither here nor there. Patrick is always telling me about he only watches action movies. There's an outside shot he's seen The Dirty Dozen.
There is an outside chance, but now that I'm looking at the screenshots, I have never seen this movie.
Did my description make you want to see it?
Yeah, I feel like my father's seen it, and he would love it, but I would love to watch this film.
All right, George, The Dirty Dozen.
It's been so long since I've seen that I really wouldn't be able to say much, but it does have a really outstanding cast. I think George Kennedy is in that too.
You're not wrong. He sure is.
It has really, really good people in it all down the line. Isn't that one of Jim Brown's first movies? It's a very strong movie. As it is Cassavetes' only Oscar nomination, it's only fitting that it ends up on this list.
I like the film a lot. I think it's actually underrated. As big a hit as it was, a lot of critics push it aside as action-y fluff. I actually think it's got a lot going on, especially compared to the action-y fluff we deal with today.
I think it's highly regarded the way the Wild Bunch is.
I would say the Wild Bunch is higher regarded, but I agree with you that I think maybe they should be closer together. So Patrick's got a lot of homework to do, it seems like. All right, guys, ready for number 2?
Always.
So I initially had this movie at number 1, but I swapped it at the last minute because I realized which of the 2 remaining movies spoke to me more, and it's going to be number 1. However, I realize and acknowledge that Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby might be the most cinematic, accomplished film on this list here at number 2. Now, Polanski is one of the filmmakers whose work is under fire these days because he did some pretty awful things. But for me, it doesn't diminish from what a well-made, intensely creepy, and wonderfully weird film this is. Ira Levin's book on which it is based is not high literature. It's a good story told in a very basic fashion, but Polanski finds the art and the allegory in making the film, creating a haunting movie that delivers in terms of the scares and the tension, but also eerily echoing the growing distrust the younger generation had for those that came before them. Cassavetes is once again very strong as Rosemary's ambitious husband, but even he can't withstand the force of nature that is screenwriter turned actress Ruth Gordon in her Oscar-winning supporting performance. Guys, I got Rosemary's Baby, initially number 1. I moved it down to number 2 at the last minute. A movie that you may have seen, Patrick.
I may have seen it, but I mean, I can't really recall it. I know it through its pop culture references. And
you thought the baby's name was Damien, so
exactly. So
I love Rosemary's Baby. It's a terrific movie. I actually think you hit on something about. It's true. The novel isn't any great piece of literature, but it is a good story. And those tend to make better movies than great pieces of literature because it's hard to capture the essence of beautiful writing. It's not hard to capture a great story, or it's not as hard.
Add on to it.
Yeah, he didn't tamper with it. It just comes to life magnificently.
Okay, you guys ready for number 1?
Yes.
I've left a lot of clues along the way on what it might be, but only somebody like George might have picked up on it. In spite of all my complaints about Cassavetes behind the camera, I do have a film he directed here at number 1. However, as George alluded in our review of Faces, it is a film that he is very unhappy with himself. As George also says, perhaps it was Cassavetes' natural filmmaking ability and ability to work with actors combined with Hollywood's sense of structure and storytelling that led to this accidental masterpiece called A Child is Waiting. Now, I have a disabled sister, so you can imagine that I might be a little biased towards a movie that takes place at a home for mentally and physically disabled children, and I was a wreck during this very powerful and harrowing movie. Cassavetes and team strip away the potential artifice and portray real kids from these homes and their struggles, focusing on one whose parents have given up on him, which puts new staff member Judy Garland on a mission to save that family, regardless of the potential consequences. The film is so real, so honest, with great black and white cinematography, great blocking for camera, and terrific framing and depth of image in the composition. The performances are great all around. Particularly noteworthy in supporting performances are the parents, as played by Jenna Rollins again, and Stephen Hill, later to play a key role for Barbra Streisand in Yentl. It's Hill who has the arc in the movie, as a parent who's desperate to help his son and then can't deal with the pain of his failure to do so. It's easier for him to cut ties altogether because his son's issues are mental and therefore hard to understand or cope with. Society struggles over the centuries to comprehend, let alone help cure mental struggles, are put on display here in a way that was highly progressive for 1963, and it is heartbreaking. I saw this film just before George assigned the John Cassavetes Top 5 as a part of a Burt Lancaster series at Film Forum, because Burt Lancaster is technically the lead in the film. And it was possibly the most surprising discovery I've made this year, and will have to be considered the next time I reevaluate my top 100 films of all time. This film made that kind of an impact on me. I doubt Patrick's seen A Child is Waiting, but George, you brought it up in the last episode.
Yeah, I started seeing that when I was a little kid myself, because my parents, my older brothers and sisters and sister had liked it very, very much. And it was shown on television. I had to be in elementary school, and it was kind of a shock for me to see Dorothy, looking not at all like Dorothy.
Referring to Judy Garland.
I really only knew her at that point as Dorothy. But I think A Child is Waiting is a beautiful movie. I'm actually very touched hearing you describe it the way you are describing it. I've never forgotten. My name is Ruben Whitcomb. I've never forgotten him. I never will.
Even working on a script, I got choked up again. I mean, and that's when I realized that I this was really my number one movie.
And I later resaw it after reading about Cassavetes' disappointment with it. I don't know what he was striving for, but what he did actually capture is so complicated, multi-leveled. I mean, on the one hand, she wants to help him so badly, having to, pull back from that, learning that it's in his interest for her to pull back from that is a very essential journey for people to be aware of. It touches your heart. I mean, you can want so badly to be of help, and the way to be of help is to let the person fall. It's just an extremely beautiful experience, the film. I think everyone in it is so good. I believe his issues with Judy Garland were not so much about the performance she gave as with the fact that she was used to being a big Hollywood star and expected a lot of star treatment on set, and they didn't have the money for that. But she certainly didn't hold back.
She's great. For a lead has a small role, but he's fine. As good as he
knew when to be supporting. He was always like that. All during the 50s, he did a lot of movies that were really about his female co-stars.
He produced a lot of those movies himself, actually.
Yeah, they clearly meant a lot to him. I think A Child Is Waiting is a beautiful film.
Patrick, did we make you want to see any of these?
Sometimes I don't like to be. I feel like I'm gonna feel too much in this film, so golly, man. But maybe I should.
Maybe your girlfriend Alex maybe wants you to get in touch with that side.
She loves films like this, and I'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ. but I end up watching. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I watched it, but it's I don't know, George. Do you feel like you felt drained afterwards, or how do you feel? How do you feel after this film?
You see, if I'm thinking about something and feeling something afterwards, I'd way rather have that feeling.
There's an exhilaration about it. I mean, it makes us, when we're touched by a movie like that, it makes us feel alive. You know what I mean? It wakes us out of that doldrums.
Yeah, it's a shame its own director didn't appreciate that the film did have the impact it had. I don't know what the experience was like for him. It might have really. And
you know what? Ultimately, it's moot. For me,
as us watching, I agree it's moot. Yeah. You don't know what it was like for him, is what I'm saying.
For sure. But I would like, if you're around and his son is obviously still around making movies, I would like to let them know that I think it's an extraordinary film, and it touched me in a major way, and I was bawling on my way out of the theater, and I think that is something. What's going on here? Patrick, what are you doing?
I lost my light.
I thought you were going to play something for us. Someone tipped out. I'm like,
I was going to play your top song.
As long as you got the rights to it. As long as it's your own competition. I can't afford the rights.
The smallest violin. No, I'm just kidding. It does sound like a film that needs to be seen. So.
And George recommended to me, and I did watch Minnie and Moskowitz. I really disliked that one.
Minnie and Moskowitz. It's hilarious.
With that in mind, what am I missing from this list? Like, is the order mixed up? What's your reaction to the list, having seen most of these movies?
Well, actually, even though I like his movies a lot more than you do, and I like him a lot more than you do, I understand why he can be off-putting. There is an indulgence to him. One of his movies was extremely popular. I think it's unbearable to watch. Husbands.
Husbands is one of the ones I watched. They played it at Film Forum, and it was awful. Like, I hate it. The thing we need more of is male hostility. Like, it was just like the worst.
No, it's unbearable. And yet another one that was universally panned, dismissed by one and all, I actually like because I think Ben Gazzara is so good in it. And it actually
is that
they call it a Chinese bookie. It has a kind of creepy post-noirish noir quality. That's a worthy uncommercial film. I really enjoy that. I actually love Minnie and Moskowitz. I think Seymour Cassel is so funny, and the bad date that Jenna Rollins goes on early in the film. I also love Opening Night. Most people I know who are fans of hers in particular and have a lot of backstage theater history, Opening Night is the one. I mean, it kind of amazes me she wasn't nominated for an Oscar for that. I think she's tremendous in it. And I think it is one of his best movies.
Would that top your list? So I guess
Opening Night would top mine of his, yes.
Opening Night would top your list. I haven't seen that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe I'll do a second run on it. I do think, however, that, Patrick will have to watch Shadows.
Very worthy movie.
Shadows is not only worthy, I would say it is one of the most important movies,
of that
American movies ever made. It basically started the concept of making independent movies.
Yes, it did.
It has some issues, but for that reason alone, I think we need to watch it for a 1959 review.
And it's on YouTube for free?
It is currently on YouTube for free, and I also downloaded it for you as a MP4 file.
Oh, well, I might just watch it tonight, you know?
There you go. Look at that. All right, guys, I'm about ready to close out. Do you guys have like a little summary? Anything you want to say about tonight's Sound Off 41?
Yeah, stop inviting me to these things. I'm awful. Okay, it's just the can I watch? Like, I have to be able to watch the film first to have any intelligible comments. You know, like those games. You do it just to piss me off. I know you do this.
I don't know what's going to happen in the games ahead of time. How am I going to prep you for the games?
No. Indie spotlights, new movie.
Patrick, I want you to come back. I mean, like, hopefully the next Sound Off there'll be more time that I can give you some prep time. George, any closing thoughts?
No, I don't think so. No.
I
enjoyed the movie game. I'd love to play it again sometime.
Because you won one.
Next time I will win more than one.
Oh, damn. All right, there it is. All right, guys, we will be back in pretty soon. We're going to try and get some more episodes out right away, starting with our current feature, and this is kickoff our 58th series episodes with Queen and Slim. So the 58th series episodes will start on Thursday, December 5th, 2019. So, guys, we will see you then to kick off our 58th series episodes. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.